Welcome guys, my name is Brian Feldman and I'm a Microsoft Azure and Security MVP. In this video I will show you a new capability called Entra ID support for Azure Bastion. Imagine if you are running Windows VMs in Azure that you want to access based on your Entra ID account. This is possible with this new capability using Azure Bastion. So we no longer have to assign a public IP address to our Azure VM. We can just simply connect using the Azure portal. To show you this new capability, we will use Azure Bicep. And for the people who don't know what Azure Bicep is an infrastructure as code language which can be used to declare your Azure infrastructure in code. In the past we used JSON, however the Bicep syntax is much cleaner and simpler to read. However, when we are running an Azure Bicep deployment against Azure, it gets converted to ARM, which is basically JSON. So what I did is that I've declared a Bicep parameter file which defines the input parameters for this deployment. So for this, we are going to use the identity landing zone. My environment will be production. This deployment is targeting the Canada Central location. And then for the username and password, which is required to deploy an Azure virtual machine, I just use the local admin user for this demo and then a random password. Of course, I will reset this after the demo. And then in the main.bicep file, the parameters get loaded. When I've selected the location, it will get converted to a short environment mapping. So basically, when I choose for Canada Central, the short name will be CNC. When the logic is done in the Bicep template, a resource group will be deployed. After that, we will deploy a virtual network within that resource group. After that, we will deploy a Bastion host to that virtual network, which uses a SKU based on the standard, because it must be standard or higher. It cannot be the basic queue. And when all those components are complete, we are going to deploy an Azure virtual machine. It will be based on the Windows 11 25H2. And we'll also make sure that it will be joined within Intune. And last but not least, we are going to do a resource role assignment, because we are going to assign the virtual machine user login to the deployer, which is basically me, because I'm going to run this template and then it will fetch the object ID from the running deployer and it will grant the access using the role assignment. Otherwise, if you don't do this, the Entra login option will not show up in the Azure Bastion section. Now we know everything is in place, it's time to deploy the Azure Bicep resources to the Azure platform. For that, I'm using the new AZ subscription deployment, because this deployment is targeting a subscription. The name of our deployment, which is just random. Then the template file, which is referencing the main.bicep file. After that, we are calling the template parameter file, which is the main.bicep param, because the parameter file defines our input parameters for this deployment. And at the end of the comment, we define our location, which will be Canada Central. I simply hit the enter button and the deployment will start. We just have to simply wait for a couple of minutes and come back in the Azure portal. So right now we are in the Azure portal. We can see that the resource group RG identity prod CNC001 has been created, including all the resources within that resource group. For the resources, we can see that the location is Canada Central, which is correct. So the last step is to test the Entra authentication using Bastion. For that, we are going to navigate to the virtual machine. From here, we can navigate to Bastion within the virtual machine page. And after waiting a little while, boom, the authentication type is Microsoft Entra ID, which is preview. Now we can simply click on connect. So right now we are connecting to the Azure Bastion host. We can see the connection is successful and it says welcome. After waiting a little while, we can see our desktop. We can also see that I'm authenticated using my own account, which is Brian Feldman. So for now, everything is good. We've tested the Entra ID authentication using Azure Bastion. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up. If you have any suggestion or feedback, please leave them in the comments. And if you want to be notified of new videos in the future, please subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye.